Hey, everybody, and happy Easter. What an amazing resurrection service we had today. The choir was in rare form, just off the charts. And the Lord blessed us with a word in the house. I preached this Easter Sunday morning in the wrong place at the right time. It is my take this year on the Easter story. Watch and be blessed. Keep the faith.
Matthew chapter 28. The reading begins with the first verse. Matthew 28, beginning with verse 1. Hear again the story for the very first time. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has been raised as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." Yo, what's up? And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here." I want to talk this morning about being in the wrong place at the right time. In the wrong place at the right time. Mama used to tell me, "Son, be careful where you go and when you go there." She said, "You don't have to really be doing anything wrong to get in trouble. Sometimes you can just end up in the wrong place at the wrong time." It's true of anybody. It's true of anywhere. Sometimes just a few seconds of difference in the arrival at a location, at an intersection, can mean the difference between life and death. One can only imagine the sorrow, the shock, the horror, and the heartbreak that the families of those diligent workers, those precious lives, those immigrant sisters and brothers, those workers who are on the bridge, Keystone Bridge in Baltimore, at a time where there's so much hatred being aimed towards immigrants. These were immigrants on the bridge doing the work. When a ship the size of a New York skyscraper crashed into the bridge, one can only imagine the horror of their families when they heard the news that their loved one had the unfortunate lot of being on the bridge at the time of the crash. I wonder how they must feel, and I wonder how the people felt who were about to cross the bridge and were fussing and cussing because the police stopped the traffic for no apparent reason. Sometimes life is a series of near hits and misses. In fact, I wonder if there's anybody here who's ever passed by some awful wreckage along one of life's busy highways, and you had to say to yourself, had I left earlier, had things turned out the way I wanted them to turn out, I could have been in that wreck. But by the grace of God, there go I. I could have been at the wrong place at the wrong time, but your grace and mercy brought me through. I'm living this moment because of you. I want to thank you and praise you too, because your grace and mercy brought me through. Sometimes the tragic convergence of time and space, of seconds and circumstances, of geography and chronology can turn your world upside down. It can happen to anybody, anywhere, but I suspect that my parents, my mom and my dad, were especially concerned because they were conscious and cognizant of the fact that they were raising 7 black boys in the hood. And their job was to keep us out of jail and out of the cemetery. So they told us, be careful, you don't want to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. I wonder, did your mama tell you that? Did your dad, did Big Mama tell you on your way to the club? Oh, don't act like you ain't never been to the club. I guess I'm talking to the saved and sanctified folk over here. Let me talk to the folk. Anybody over here ever been? Raise your hand if you ever been to the club. Raise your hand if you were at the club last night, but you're in church. Don't lie, you're in church now. They told me that because they understood sometimes being in the wrong place at the wrong time is an issue of safety. That sometimes being in the wrong place at the wrong time is not about the loss of safety. It may mean the loss of opportunity. Someone has said, one day my ship will come in. Someday my ship will come in, and with my luck, I'll be at the airport. As I've taken inventory of my life, it seems that I have a knack for missing what's rightfully mine because my timing is always wrong. I always seem to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's how the disciples must have felt that Good Friday. Standing at the foot of the cross, watching and gazing at the cross. It's the one in whom they placed their life and for whom they had left everything. Was crucified on a cross, lynched on a tree. And the message of the powers was clear. These public executions, these state-sanctioned killings that lasted for hours and sometimes for days. Trauma and terror was the point. Message was, you don't challenge power. Yet they had placed their trust in the one who said that the kingdom of God is at hand. He had talked about a kingdom, and there, the one who told them about a kingdom was hanging on the cross. There they were watching him, and they knew that it had implications for them. He was in trouble. That meant that they also were in trouble. They too could be killed. They too could be lynched. They could be strung up on a tree, shot while handcuffed, lying down. You know, there's more than one way to be crucified. You know, Mel Gibson in that movie that he did on Jesus, one of my criticisms of that movie is that when they get to the crucifixion period, Jesus is bludgeoned and bloodied to death. And the two men on each side of him, they barely have any blood on them at all. Not only is that wrong, it's theologically wrong. The point of the crucifixion is not to point to the singularity of the crucifixion of one man. It isn't to say that Jesus is the only person who was crucified. It is to say that Jesus is in solidarity with all those who are crucified by empires all over the world. There are no bloodless crucifixions. So sometimes you can find yourself crucified, maybe hanging up on a tree, experiencing asphyxiation, or experiencing it with a knee on your neck. It might have a different name, but a crucifixion is a crucifixion, and those who are standing there said, I must be in the wrong place at the wrong time. No wonder all of his disciples left. Left him at the cross. They all left. That is, all of them left except the women. The men left. It's in the text. The women remained. Thank God for the women. And for those who are still wondering, I talked to a preacher the other week. I couldn't believe it. He's still struggling about whether or not God can use a woman to lead, whether or not God can use a woman to carry the word. Well, the first person to carry the word was a woman. The last one at the cross were some women. The first ones at the cemetery to discover that he's not there to proclaim he is risen. The first person to preach he is risen was the women. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. It was a tomb, it was dark, it was dingy, it was a dismal place, but it was all they had left that connected them to him. So they made their way to the tomb. Now, everybody has to be somewhere. Who in the world wants to be standing in the cemetery while it is still dark? Early on a Sunday morning, there they were at the tomb on a Sunday morning, and there may be somebody right here who physically is sitting in the sanctuary, but mentally and emotionally you're walking through a cemetery, through a dead place, or you feel like your life is coming toward a dead end. Anybody here ever been there? No obvious way out. Life in a dead space, career in a dead space, finances in a dead space, family life in a dead space. So overwhelmed by the demands that your mind is in a dead space. Perhaps your heart has become numb by so much abuse and so much neglect, and your heart is in a dead space, broken seemingly beyond repair. All of us experience some brokenness at one time or another. Maybe your marriage is in a dead place. Have you been there? Done that? Everybody in church likes to act like they got it all together, but somebody's been there. Have you been there? Done that? Got the t-shirt? You ought not act so saved and sanctimonious. There may be somebody who's going through what you've already been through, and they need to know that there's a resurrection on the other side of Good Friday. You ought to say, baby, it'll be all right. I've been in a dead place. I've lived in a dead space, but hold on. Friday is now, but Sunday is on the way. Trouble don't last always. There's life on the other side of death. I wish I had a witness here who's been there, been through depression, been through divorce, been through mental anguish, been through getting laid off or knocked down, and here you are standing. You're able to say, look at me, I'm a testimony. Is there a witness that there is life on the other side of death? We want life. We want it more abundantly. Come now, see these women come to the tomb to pay tribute to the one who was their life. When they got there, they encountered not the Lord, but an angel of the Lord who has rolled back the stone. And he says, do not be afraid. I know who you're looking for. I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. I know that you are looking for the brother that was lynched on the tree, and you saw them when they laid him in the tomb. Well, he is not here. You came looking for him in this place, but he is not here. In other words, you're in the wrong place. And can I tell you parenthetically, my beloved, that people have a way of convincing themselves that you have to stay in the place where they laid you, where they left you. And they think that just because they left you somewhere, just because they laid you somewhere, just because they consigned you to what they think is your place in life, that you have to stay where they laid you. Well, I got news for you, baby. You're in the wrong place, because now you see me and now you don't. God's got a new chapter for me. God can take me to a new place. And so they're in the wrong place. He is life. They're in a dead place, looking for life. You ought not ever expect to find life, see life, or experience life in a dead place. Can I help you this morning? If it looks dead and feels dead and appears to be dead and shows up acting dead, guess what? It's dead. In fact, in Mark's version of the story, the women come bringing spices. They come bringing spices because sometimes it smells dead. You'll get that about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Some of you are trying to make something smell sweet, trying to pretend like it's alive when you already know it's dead, and it doesn't matter how much you try to sweeten it up. It doesn't matter how much you try to put candy and roses around it, it's already dead. Baby, you ought to trust your nose. You ought to trust your instinct. If it looks dead and shows up dead and acts dead and smells dead, it's dead. Doesn't matter how many spices or how much spice you try to bring to it, it's still dead. The spices might preserve it, but you're just preserving a dead thing. And there's nothing worse than preserving a dead thing when God's got life for you somewhere else. But you got to have the courage to leave a dead situation so that you can embrace the life that's on the other side. The angel said, he is not here. Don't come looking for life in a dead place. Some of you should have made a career move a long time ago. You should have left that situation a long time ago. You're still trying to stir up some life in a dead situation. You should have left that relationship a long time ago. Looking for love in all the wrong places. You don't have to listen to me, just listen to the angel. He is not here. Hear that differently. You're looking for love in all the wrong places. He is not here. I know you've been hanging around 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, been engaged 15 years. He is not here. The angel said, he is not here. Go quickly. Go quickly. Your whole life is in front of you. Go quickly. That ain't for everybody, but it's for somebody. In one way or another, we've all been there. Sometimes your life or some part of your life is just not where you know it ought to be. Ever woke up in the morning and said, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I can feel the restlessness in my spirit. I don't know what's next, but I know that there's more to life than this. Hear the angel again. The angel says, do not be afraid. The bad news is you're in the wrong place. The good news is you're in the wrong place at the right time. You might be in the wrong place, but if you're there at the right time, God has a way of taking space and time and causing all of it to work together for the good. The angel said, you've come to the wrong place at the right time. I know it's the right time because as they entered the cemetery, the Bible says suddenly. Sometimes you're in a dark place a long time and it seems like the light will never shine, but after a while it happens, and it happens when you least expect. It happens suddenly. Suddenly, I like that word, suddenly. It's an adverb. It is a modifier denoting a decisively and speedy shifting in time. I like that. Suddenly, it is an instantaneous inflection point with implications for everything that happened prior to that point. I may have been in a messed up situation on this side of the sentence, but on the other side of the sentence, there was a suddenly, and the suddenly undermines everything that was happening on the other side. Suddenly. I was in a bad situation, but suddenly. I was sick, but suddenly. My enemy thought he had me, but suddenly. Suddenly, there was an earthquake. There was a shifting, sudden, and a shaking, an earthquake. The angel of the Lord came down, shifting above their head and a shaking beneath their feet. My beloved, there are moments when we're in the wrong place, but God and God's sovereign power knows how to take a moment when we're in the wrong place, hook it up with the right time, create a resurrection experience. God bless the memory of young Emmett Till, young forever, 14 years old. See that precious face? Emmett Till had the terrible misfortune being in the wrong place at the wrong time. A 14-year-old boy from Chicago who did not understand the strange career of Jim Crow. His mama said, you're going down, boy, to Mississippi. Folks down south have certain ways, and you gotta obey those ways. Don't look in certain people's faces. And if a white woman looks at you, you got to look down on the ground. And he said, Mama, it can't be that bad. She said, actually, it's worse. And you know the rest of that ugly story. This 14-year-old precious child was taken away from us for allegedly whistling at a white woman. And you remember the ugliness of that situation, but thank God for Emmett Till, but thank God especially for Mamie Till, because she was a sister who understood that God can take an ugly situation. I want you to be very clear. His killing was not the will of God. And the folk who say that got a jacked up theology. Emmett Till's killing was not the will of God. God's will is not shown in tragedy. God's will is shown in what we do with tragedy. All things are not good. Some things are good. Some things are bad. But God knows how to take somebody in the wrong place and hook them up with the right time. And we weren't able to save Emmett Till. He died. He was disfigured. He was bludgeoned to death. And we could not save him, but he saved the whole country, inspired the civil rights movement, inspired the civil rights marches, and by his stripes, the nation was healed. Wrong place. Right time. Then Christ, God, was redeeming the time. He who had left eternity in order to enter into time was now bending time to his will. God was doing something brand new in the world. So the angel says, you've got to understand what just happened. This is the wrong place, but it's the right time. It's God's time. Because death has finally met its match. Evil has finally gone too far. And the grave has illegally confiscated that which it did not own. And so he went down into captivity in order to hold captivity captive. He died until death died. He died until the grave lost its power over him. He says, I know you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has been raised. You've come to the wrong place, but you've just come at the right time. That's why I came down. And I rolled back the stone and I sat on it. Somebody's got a heavy burden this morning. A stone, a barrier, a stumbling block that's gotten in your way and you feel like you're in the wrong place. That may be true, but I've got news for you. It's resurrection time. It's liberation time. It's salvation time. It's freedom time. I know somebody who can roll back the stone, roll back the heavy burden, roll back the barrier, roll back the stumbling block that's in your way and sit on it. God knows how to make your enemies your footstool. And so the angel came down and rolled back the stone. I've got to get out of here, but can I tell you that he did not roll back the stone so that Jesus could get out? Because no barrier, no wall, no stumbling block could get in his way. He can be wherever he wants. As a matter of fact, he can be in a few places at the same time. He's God all by himself. The angel didn't roll back the stone so Jesus could get out. The angel rolled back the stone so that they could get in and see what the Lord had already done. You missed your shout. You missed your blessing. God has to roll back the stone. God has to roll back the veil in front of your eyes so you can see what God has already done. You're waiting on something to happen to you. God has already done it. God has already saved you. God has already forgiven you. God has already healed you. God has already gifted you. What are you waiting for to walk into your rightful place? God has already promised never to leave you nor forsake you. God has already laid the foundation and opened up the way. What more can he do? You're in the right place. The angel said, you're not where you ought to be. You're standing here in the cemetery. Wrong place, right time. Got to get you to the right place at the right time. So the angel says, he is not here. That's the bad news. Good news is God has raised him. And he told me to tell you to meet him in Galilee. Here you are hanging out in a dead place because it's all you've ever known. Meanwhile, God's got another place for you. And you can't get to where God wants you to go because you're caught up in where you've always been. And you can't imagine life on the other side. Jesus says, meet me in Galilee, because that's when I'm going to spread this gospel to the ends of the world. In other words, I've got a mission for you that's bigger than anything you ever imagined. And so I want you to meet me somewhere else. Where he wants you to go, he's already gone. He says Jesus is already on the way to Galilee, but he wants you to go where he is already gone. He's just waiting on you to get there. And where he wants you to go, he's already gone. He's just waiting on you to have enough courage to leave this graveyard and go to Galilee. And so they left and they made their way. But while they were on their way, they bumped into Jesus. You'll get that after dinner. They left and made their way to go where Jesus told them to go. But on their way to getting to where he was, they bumped into him on the way to getting to where they were supposed to meet him. Jesus is the only somebody I know who can meet you right where you are. Wherever you are, Jesus can meet you right there. You don't have to go somewhere to meet Jesus. You don't have to change yourself. If you could change yourself, you don't need Jesus. Somebody said, I'm coming to church, but I got to get my life together. Well, if you could get your life together, you don't need church. You don't need God. What you need to acknowledge is that you can't get yourself together. That's why he has to meet you right where you are. Is there anybody here who can say that he'll meet you right where you are, and he'll send you where you need to go? And on your way to getting to where you need to go, you'll bump into the one that you're going to meet. And when you get there, you'll discover that he beat you there in order to greet you there. Jesus is the only somebody who can put me in the right place at the right time. We better get out of here. But I just want to tell you that you're in the right place. And this is the right time. It's the right time to get your blessing, to get healed of your bruises, to get set free from bondage. You're in the right place at the right time to receive your deliverance, to perceive a new direction, to conceive a new dream, to accept your salvation, to embrace liberation, to experience sanctification. You're in the right place, and this is the right time. You ought not wait to do tomorrow what you ought to do today. This is the right place to give him your life, to say yes to Jesus, to say yes to the Holy Spirit. You're in the right place. It's resurrection time. reconciliation time. It's restoration time. It's your time. You've been waiting. You don't have to stay in a dead place. Stand up all over this building. Those who can, those who are able, please stand. You don't have to stay where you are. It's Resurrection Sunday. This is the highest day on the Christian calendar. All roads lead to resurrection. If you're here today and you need a church home, you're in the right place. The doors of the church are open. This is the right time. You ought not wait to do tomorrow what you can do today. You're in the right place. This is the right time. Maybe you just need special prayer. You need God to touch you. Won't you come?
In the right place.
Yes.
At the right time to receive a blessing.
Doors of the church are open.
From the Lord.
The altar is open.
You're in the right place.
This is the right time.
At the right time to receive a blessing.
Come on.
From the